right. We are live. Let me double check everything here, but so excited to jump in today. We've got an awesome stream. It doesn't look, yep. We've got an awesome stream for everybody today where we are going to be providing an AvaCloud update. I'm really excited about this because the team has been working really hard behind the scenes going into this year to develop all sorts of new tools and product developments just to make it easier to deploy and launch your L1 and also make your use case come to life. So take whatever it is that you're building and build it on Avalanche on your own L1 and see it all the way through to production. So we have a couple guests with me today. I'm very, very excited to have both Anthony and Will from the AvaCloud team here. I will pass it to each of you quick just to do a short intro. So Anthony, if you want to go first, tell everybody who you are.
Sure. Thanks, Perry. First of all, happy Friday, everyone. Love to jump on a stream on a Friday afternoon. So great to be here. I'm Anthony Giannacco. I'm a senior solutions architect with AvaCloud. And so what that means is I basically meet with all kinds of teams and projects within the Avalanche ecosystem and help them launch their L1s. So yeah, very excited to be here and chat more about AvaCloud and what's coming up. Will?
Thanks, Anthony. Will Waltrip. I'm on the product side here at AvaCloud. Been around for 2 years now at Ava Labs, and prior to that, I worked at Zero Hash and also did some stint in banking as well. So super excited. Been here helping out AvaCloud and building the product up since very early on.
Great. Thank you guys for those intros. Dream team, in my opinion. And I'd love to see it. AvaCloud represented. So really, we wanted to put this stream together. As you guys have noticed across the board, we've had a few different streams over the last couple of weeks. We have many more to come. It's going to be an ongoing series where we're highlighting L1 builders with our builder spotlights and then also providing product updates on AvaCloud as we continue to see more and more L1s come to life. So who is this talk for? This is for anybody that's interested in deploying your own L1. Maybe you've been looking for a chain or have been chainless and are searching for where your next home is. We'd love to have you here on Avalanche on your own L1. You can ship a test net in 15 minutes. You can get to mainnet in 30 minutes, and you can actually get to production. So want to highlight that point above all. And we've got all sorts of tools behind the scenes to just out of our portal to make it easier for you to, bring your use case to life. We also want to, share other L1s that have launched and what other people are doing and building across the board. So we'll highlight some of those today. We're really excited about that. But I really am excited about this talk because AvaCloud has come so far since it was launched. I mean, there are so many stories that we could share. Fun stories of things that we've had to troubleshoot and also just amazing product developments. But really that full product lifecycle, right? Like taking something from start and just an idea, building it out, shipping it, and then actually having people use it, I think is a really, really great journey to be on, but also to highlight. And so this is hopefully going to be super informative for everybody that's listening. You know, we want to obviously continue to build this product to be the best possible product we can. And I'm excited to dive in a little bit more about the AvaCloud story. So with that being said, Will, I think I'd love to pass it to you to give a little bit more of an intro on the story behind AvaCloud, how we got here.
Yeah, so I think the AvaCloud is like an interesting, fun backstory. Obviously, like it came from a very intrinsic need of, hey, we've got this product in Avalanche called subnets, but how do we get adoption? And so I remember early on when I joined Ava Labs, and they had this hackathon at one point, and we're like, hey, let's build a product to make it easier to launch subnets. And so that eventually became AvaCloud, but even for a period of time after that, there was still this whole like bootstrapping period of, okay, we've got a few clients who are maybe interested in this. Let's go through the exercise of getting them launched. And it was very manual and involved a lot of people. And at the time, it was still pretty expensive. I think like we were running around 10K for a mainnet, 6K for a testnet. And then that's even outside of kind of the costs around AVAX staking at the time when you have subnet validators. So, we kind of saw this opportunity, like, let's go in and optimize this for clients and start to get a few more of these subnets up and running. So then, we got through that initial like bootstrapping period. We started to see, hey, maybe there's a little bit of product market fit around. Okay, clients want this. We've launched a few more subnets. How do we speed this up? How do we make this like delivery cycle much quicker? And so, it started off with having the AvaCloud portal. We could support DevNets, and so AvaCloud would host a copy of Fuji and allow clients to kick around and do that for free. And we saw some adoption there, and then we quickly, by the end of the 2023, had testnet and mainnet support. And originally, it just kind of reduce some of the operating burden on the internal teams, but then eventually we started to push it out and see some client pickup. And I think fast forward to today, it's exciting because I think back a while ago when we were deploying subnets and going through this whole process, it would take upwards of a week, right? You got to deploy the infrastructure. That maybe takes, a day or so, but then you have to go through the process of, okay, we've got to go through finance, get the staking transactions done, all of this sort of stuff. And now we can get a mainnet up in about 30 minutes. We've seen some clients come through and deploy a mainnet without even talking to, Anthony here, and, which is, fun and exciting, and, totally different perspective of where we were. And then, we've really been able to drop the costs of how much this, the cost for these clients, where it's gone from, like I said, like 10K for a mainnet to now we've got the retro 9,000 pricing of about $1,000. And, once we're past that, the cost will be, much, much less than 10K. And so we're looking at ways we can further optimize this. At the end of the day, we really saw this opportunity to allow customers to do some rapid experimentation by being able to deploy a testnet, play around with it, use the interoperability that is a unique selling proposition for Avalanche, and then they're able to get to market quicker. And that was just the baseline with what we were starting to do with AvaCloud.
Sweet. Yeah. Thanks for that recap. I mean, it's a lot packed into a little, but there's been so many iterations and changes. I was a part of that at the early days. And I remember a lot of fun conversations that had to be had and new things that had to be explored in order to actually get people to testnet and mainnet production. It was quite a lift. And obviously barriers to entry too, the costs, things that everybody goes into. We have so many people that approached and wanted to deploy, and those barriers were definitely stopping them in some way, shape, or form from even just getting out of like the iteration phase or development phase from the MVP side. They had, so many obstacles. And so it's been really great to take each one of those down across the board and see so many builders actually continue being able to build and scale with Avalanche. And obviously with all the recent changes, the ability to lower those costs, it makes everything much more feasible, which leads me to, we've had some really, really great clients launch and deploy incredible use cases from across the board, from gaming, enterprise, institutional, you name it. We've probably covered it and are continuing to, but Anthony, would love to hear, some of your stories of clients that we've worked with, maybe what they implemented, how they got from their idea into production, and the success that they've achieved through that while, running under the hood of AvaCloud. So
totally. Yeah, no, I think it's always fun to talk about the different clients and their origin stories, where they came from, why, and kind of how they got to their use cases and how they built them out. But I wanted to share that I had my 1-year anniversary with AvaLabs this week. So that was very exciting. And before AvaLabs, I was actually working at Ernst & Young, which is an audit and consulting firm in their Web3 group, doing Web3 implementations for various enterprise clients. So the first kind of customer use case that I'll share is directly relevant to me because I had experience at EY, but Deloitte actually was one of the first, or if not the very first, subnet that the AvaCloud team supported. And really the reason why they came to us was because, well, first of all, they wanted to actually fork the Avalanche network, which I think is really interesting because they wanted to get away from that 2,000 a box staking requirement that subnets originally had in order to stake to the primary network. Obviously, this was addressed with the E upgrade and is no longer a requirement. But going back to 2023, I think that was like top of mind for them and kind of a non-starter, right? They couldn't really engage with a subnet architecture because they would have to take on a cryptocurrency into their balance books, and they're an audit firm at the end of the day. It's like that's their bread and butter, is like they would just increase a lot of like regulatory burden for them. So I think that really like spurred this AvaCloud idea where it was like, okay, how can we support, they had a use case in mind. They wanted to have their own network with their own kind of customizations, which is, perfectly aligned with the Avalanche vision of having like a network of networks, but how can we support them with their specific requirements, right? And so I think that's where the notion of like staking on behalf of our users for that staking requirement, such that they didn't have to actually hold those tokens on their balance books, was kind of like a key unlocker for them. And then they were able to kind of proceed with their testnet and mainnet launch. And really their use case was around, they call it close as you go, which was a use case in collaboration with a government agency called FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I'm actually from Florida, so we have a lot of hurricanes, obviously. And so I'm more familiar with FEMA than most, I'd say, but it's notoriously inefficient in how they kind of disperse those disaster relief funds and not very transparent at all. And so you'll actually hear stories of like states getting, FEMA funds that they have to return because after 10 years there was some crazy audit and they had been given too much. And it's really challenging for state and local governments to kind of plan for that when they're just trying to help their constituents after a disaster. So they kind of built this use case that streamlined the disaster relief efforts by improving the efficiency and transparency of that document management and that fund distribution using their subnet at the time. So that was a really cool kind of like really awesome enterprise government use case on how we can bring efficiency, which is kind of like a current topic in the US government these days. So definitely wanted to highlight that as one of the OGs. And then when you're thinking about like these consulting firms and stuff, they have so many different clients that they work with and so many different use cases. And so by allowing them, kind of working with them and collaborating with them, we're able to like expedite some of that experimentation, not only with them, but also with their partners that they work with who are exploring Web3 and blockchain. So that's a good one. And then another one I wanted to highlight is more related to loyalty points. So SK Planet, which is a Korean consumer enterprise company, they have a huge loyalty program called OK Cashback, so OCB. They have millions of users. I think half the South Korean population is using this reward system. So it's very common in Korea. But they were looking to bring that integrated loyalty platform on chain. And so they ended up working with us and deploying an L1. And within the first 48 hours of launching, which was really exciting, they were able to have 100,000 new users registered onto their L1, which is really exciting in terms of adoption. So that's still live and going. They have over 22 million transactions to date. And just another kind of awesome kind of big name use case, seeing success with Avalanche L1s launched by AvaCloud. So
Wow, that's great. Thanks for that recap. And I mean, there's so many more projects that we could highlight, and we eventually will, because I think there's just a lot of amazing progress being made, especially on the adoption side for these applications. So it's not just an idea of like what can we build and launch, and then hopefully somebody uses it. It's actually being used in practice by either existing Web2 audiences or audiences on an existing product, or there's a whole variety of people who are launching and having native Web3 users join in as well. So really great to highlight. I think, that journey as a whole, like as we go back and we just talk about, AvaCloud from a high level, where it's been, where it's going, what's coming next. Would love to dive in a little bit on, where we're at today. So obviously, historically speaking, we took a process that was much more complicated, lots of barriers to entry, hard to maybe even wrap your head around unless you had a full DevOps team. We say this in our onboarding and when we're meeting with people, like, you don't need to bring your own Web3 DevOps team. You don't necessarily need to have Web3 native builders for the infrastructure side. You can build your product, whether it's Web3 or Web2, and you can onboard right into AvaCloud and have that all taken care of, and then you can continue building. But that whole frame, just to say that, was so like years of work essentially to get to that point. But where are we at today? Like what is like the current TLDR of AvaCloud? Would love to. Yeah, I don't know, Will, if you want to give like a quick intro, or Anthony, on like what the current status is of AvaCloud at this moment, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I can jump in. So I think fast forward to today, we talked about like all the pain points, high barrier to entry, both technically complex as well as costs. Now we're at this stage of great. The original thesis was we think subnets are going to be valuable for clients. We've proved that out. Now we're trying to scale that, get that into more people's hands, and ultimately get projects to launch faster and be, attract more clients, onboard clients faster, so on and so forth. A big innovation that came from Avalanche's platform team was Avalanche 9000, which I think, had massive impacts for AvaCloud and what we were able to do and kind of update the platform. But obviously it attracted more people to launch L1s, more people to build L1 launchers, and which is actually a good thing. Like, it's exciting to see the space growing, exciting to see kind of the surface area of people who are supporting L1s. So, with this now, what's possible is you can launch an incredibly cheap L1. It's incredibly fast. The tokenomic mechanisms available to you with, this concept of having your validator manager, that you can write custom code using a smart contract to dictate the rule set around your validator set, how you issue rewards, all of those sorts of things have opened up a number of innovations that, we're starting to see and speak with more clients about. I mentioned at this stage, you can launch a testnet on AvaCloud in 15 minutes. You can launch a mainnet in about 30 minutes. And then it's incredibly cheap. Those are all great. That's, why it's helpful to launch an L1. But I think then there's kind of the stage past this. So I think the L1 launching is going to become easier and easier. That's no longer the hard part. The hard part is, what are all the mechanisms that we need to get a client live, right? There's a short list of things that we hear about. I think interoperability is becoming a big one, right? So, the selling proposition around Avalanche as a whole is, hey, we've got this native interoperability mechanism that's cheaper, easier to adopt than maybe other tooling that's out there. Hey, how do I do gasless transactions? Any business who's coming to AvaCloud from the Web2 world is saying, my users, they don't get it. They don't want to deal with gas. I want to totally obfuscate that way. Great. So that's another problem. And then I think too, like user authentication, user onboarding, key management, that also becomes a big problem. And, we're starting to step in there on a number of different fronts. You know, I think this initially started with, Anthony mentioned SK before, and early on they kind of expressed some of the pain points there, and we supported them with, a gas relayer product, right? So they support a meta transaction relayer. It's helped them to scale. It's helped them to reach this large user base, like Anthony mentioned, and that wouldn't have been possible without some of this tooling. We're seeing more of our clients adopt this where, hey, we want to obfuscate that away. We get this off the shelf with AvaCloud. You can click through in a few minutes, have your relayer up and running, and you can start sending transactions to it to easily manage and obfuscate all of that away from your users. And then I'll talk in a few minutes, maybe a little bit more around where we're going with like user authentication, user onboarding, key management. But we keep seeing a lot of these themes come up, and so more generally, we're kind of at the starting line in some ways around what we're trying to achieve. We've got clients in the door now, and so our goal is really to how do we make them as successful as possible and capture as much value as possible.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think having joined a year ago and seeing the product then versus now, in addition to everything Will just mentioned about Avalanche 9000 and what that unlocked, I think as it becomes easier and easier to launch your L1 and like manage the precompiles, for example, which are the configurations for, the network parameters, allow lists, et cetera, teams can spend less time worrying about that and more time thinking creatively about how they want to structure, for example, their validator management or incorporate different flexible tokenomics strategies and things like that, and engage their communities for lasting value as opposed to like an extract methodology with other kind of initiatives. So I think that piece there is something we'll continue to see, is like even more kind of novel approaches as it becomes easier and easier to set up the base level infrastructure. But I think I'm going to be the example guy, but I'll give a few more examples of interesting clients more recently. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Lamina One, which is a really awesome project. I got to meet Rebecca Barkin, the CEO, at our Avalanche Summit in LATAM. She actually did a really great fireside chat with John Wu. I'll put the link in the live chat for those tuning in to kind of take a look at that. You should definitely watch it and get more information. But in brief, basically, they are kind of changing the way that the creator and IP economy works with a vision to realize an open, decentralized, and interconnected online world, fostering freedom, privacy, and prosperity for all contributors to creative pieces. So their origin story is interesting because they actually also tried to fork Avalanche, which I think is an interesting kind of theme we've kind of heard a lot this year. But so they attempted to fork Avalanche, and then once the subnet L1 kind of model was picking up, they decided to move over and leverage AvaCloud. And I think they're important to highlight because not only are they, having a lot of transactions on their primary network for this kind of IP creator management protocol, they're also leveraging the gas relayer. So a lot of the creators don't even have to have a Web3 background to kind of know what they're doing. They're abstracting that away for a lot of their creators and consumers. And then they also, like when they did this migration from their forked beta net, they had like a really clever way of like actually migrating the state of their network. Based on like how active particular addresses were, they were kind of reissued tokens on the new Avalanche L1s managed by AvaCloud. So I think that's a cool, like I think a lot of teams who are maybe on, other layer ones or layer twos and kind of exploring maybe a different avenue. It's like sometimes like the idea of like a chain migration is a little daunting, but we're seeing it more and more, and we're able to support that in a lot of different ways. So just wanted to call that out there. But yeah, in addition to leveraging the gasless relayer, they actually have an additional layer one called to manage their identity platform, which is directly integrated with their primary network. And so I think that's cool because they really are taking advantage of that idea of like, why compete for block space when they can have their identity kind of protocol running on one L1, leveraging the ICM and the interchain token transfer between that L1 and their primary L1 and send the messages back and forth for user authentication with the transactions that they're performing on the primary network. So really, really interesting use case there. And I think more and more teams are going to start seeing, multiple L1s for whatever it may be, right? Like different verticals, different regions, things like that, and then leveraging that interchain communication. And then just in terms of metrics, I think they have over 16.5 million transactions to date across both of their L1s. And then about 10 million of those were actually on the gas fee layer. So again, abstracting away the kind of Web3 experience for their users, which I think is really powerful. And then I guess I always like to talk about gaming. Gotta.
Yeah.
Gaming on the best. So Nexon is really cool. They're bringing their MapleStory Universe game on chain. They have, I think, millions of users. It's kind of a legacy OG for them, which I think is awesome. And they've been an AvaCloud client for a long time. And they really, really appreciated being able to leverage a number of different test environments. And so they, we want to complement teams' internal processes, right? If you're developing a game on Web3, you still need to go through that process of like various, load testing, different staging environments, et cetera, before you actually release to production, and being able to support that at the level that, at the rigor and the kind of like cadence that they required for their strict processes, I think was really powerful. But I know there's some exciting things coming out from them, but I think I'll wait to share those, Perry. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, no, more to come on that. So stay tuned. We've got some, exciting updates coming here in the next couple of weeks around that. I think we might have lost Will. So we'd love to have him back. So you know how it goes. We'll see if we can get him to rejoin here in a second, but we'll keep the conversation going. I find it just really, really intriguing. And I think other people will too. There's this idea that, how maybe you want to get started in Web3 and launch your product, or you're an existing Web2 company that's thinking about like, how do I get to Web3? There's all these different avenues to like onboard. And I think you and I have seen just, there's all these different approaches, and then how do you actually scale and things like that. But I think what I want to touch on is like, you can go from being having a Web2 product or Web2 audience to Web3 now with just a few clicks. And same thing where if you're on another network or chain, and maybe God forbid, can't scale, or you're running into technical challenges with that network, and maybe it doesn't work the way that it was intended, and you want to move, maybe you're an existing ERC20 and you want to move over to your own L1. Like, you can literally do that in just a few clicks now. And I think we've seen an uptick overall, in my opinion, on the inbound side for AvaCloud, like especially over the last couple of months, where it's like, hey, we've been trying to build, we can't do it in whatever manner we're hoping, but now we've heard about, L1s. We've also heard that like there's interchain token transfers, and like, we can like actually scale. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on like that, or just like the,
I think
where it's at?
Yeah, I think it just kind of goes back to my point where it's like, where teams are moving around, right? If something's not working for you, as you should, right? You should change your underlying infrastructure to support your project goals. Like, I think that's very normal. And you're on Twitter and X, I'm on Twitter and X. I see it all the time. There's like these threads of like people just like having negative experiences on, whatever infrastructure and, whatever that may be, right? And then people are always coming up with these like kind of, they seem very convoluted ways to get around that, or address kind of some of those pain points that they were feeling. And then you see the Avalanche people replying like, just create your own L1. It's that easy. And then I think people are starting to see, oh, actually there's like a lot of tooling and a lot of ways to accelerate that. Whereas like, maybe something that you would consider to be like more of a expensive and very time intensive process of like launching an L1 is actually not on the Avalanche ecosystem, when you have tools like AvaCloud, where you can kind of just have essentially instant readiness, which I think is really powerful. So we're seeing this more and more. And I think we will continue to see that. And we're just happy to like support, right? Is like, we want to provide the infrastructure. We want everyone's L1s to be live. We want them to be transferring assets across, different environments and collaborating and creating a network effect, a network of networks, and really just kind of broadening the Web3 footprint globally. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think it's actually a trend, and we'll continue to see that throughout the year.
Yeah, that's great. Public service announcement. If you're looking for a place to launch your network, your own blockchain, you can do it on Avalanche. You can use AvaCloud, and we're here to help. So if you're banging your head against the wall, like, why can't we get to production? We're here for you with open arms, and we'll make it easy for you. So we've got Will back, which is great. I want to definitely touch on just briefly, if we can, this really, really big announcement we had surrounding EERC and our privacy solutions. We've got a lot more coming up on it, so we'll save like the deep dive for that. So stay tuned for more, but we'll work closely, obviously, on that with the team, and would love for you to just share a little bit about what excites you about it. I mean, we're getting just tons of amazing feedback, and people are adopting it, using it, but would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe to back up, and we'll probably hit on this a little bit next week, because I think we've got another stream on this. So we realized that privacy was going to be pretty critical, not just for enterprise use cases, but also, even for your more Web3 native projects. There's a lot of value propositions, a lot of, hey, protect alpha, but also can make in-game mechanics more interesting, provides operational efficiencies for institutions and things like this. We ended up acquiring a company called Etropay. We kind of first got a glimpse of what they were doing when someone posted this really cool video of using your mobile phone to check out using crypto at a point of sale. So that spurred the interest, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And that crew has been doing a bunch of incredible things. I've been able to witness and help and chat with them a bunch since they came in. But EERC is the first thing we've launched, and again, like, very exciting. But I think the whole privacy narrative is very interesting for us, right? We see. We work with a lot of institutional clients, large enterprise clients, and they keep coming to us and saying, "Hey, like, we want to launch on a chain, but we run into this problem. We need to keep data obfuscated for one of a few different reasons. Could be, hey, we're a conglomerate of institutions that are performing transactions with each other, and we don't want other institutions to know the value of those transactions." So kind of that narrative around, like, protecting alpha, protecting our portfolio position, things like that. There's another side of things of, hey, there's an argument to be made around supporting by having confidentiality and privacy within a chain. Does it help with regulatory concerns when you're operating in Europe, let's say, and there's kind of GDPR and things like this? So there's these benefits that are starting to creep out of the woodwork, that if we can fix those problems that are coming up, which are addressed by some of these privacy solutions, we can all of a sudden see this unlock of more companies, more use cases, more liquidity coming on chain, which will then lead to more adoption from the consumer side of things, which is great. Like, there's more transactions, more users performing this. And that's, we wanted to start with EERC. It's highly portable, a very efficient proof generation, and can easily be deployed on any L1, including C-Chain. And so we think there's probably some interesting use cases for people to explore. I think we put a blog post out recently, and we'd love to hear some feedback around some of that stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that overview on everything privacy related. There is more to come, so we'll be having the whole privacy team on a stream. We've got some exciting updates surrounding that whole suite of services coming soon. So I did put up real quick. You can see the blog post right there. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. The code repo is available too. You can dive in and begin using. We're already seeing like a bunch of people start to explore. But to your point, it opens up just this wide array of more opportunities. And I think that's been like a really great trend to see with AvaCloud as a whole, is that we're expediting things. And you even said it, it's so easy to launch an L1 now. That isn't necessarily like the hard part. But the hard part is like, what do you do next? Like how do we get our product to be viable, and what sorts of solutions are out there from the teams that are building these tools to launch an L1 so that we can continue advancing whatever we're doing. And privacy tooling as a whole just unlocks, I mean, on the institutional enterprise side, even for native Web3 builders, there's all sorts of unique use cases that this presents. And I'm sure we're going to know more here in the next couple of weeks as we continue to see the amount of times the code repo is forked and people are trying new things. But we've got some exciting updates on our end on that side too. So thanks for highlighting that. That's the blog post again, just posted there. I'm going to drop it down and let's talk about like, what's coming up. So like, what are, things that we've seen with launches, over the last couple of weeks and kind of where we're at. And I don't know if you want to highlight that, Anthony, but it'd be cool.
Sure. I'll start.
Yeah,
I think I'll kind of set the stage a little bit, and then I'll pass it to Will with more of the product features there. But I'll give an example of another gaming client, which is Konami, which is a big name in Japan. And basically, similar as we were talking before, they wanted to create a bit of a seamless in-game experience for their huge user base as they were incorporating NFTs into their gaming platforms and actually creating like an NFT marketplace for their users as well. And so really this is like a common pattern we see is like clients with use cases is like, I have a Web2 business and I want to incorporate Web3 features to increase engagement or whatever their goals are, right? Increase revenue, increase, potential there from marketing or whatever it may be. So that's kind of their goal and a key challenge, right? Is like Web3 is difficult, the user experience is bad. And this kind of led them to explore an embedded wallet feature that actually simplified the transition for their existing users to actually start interacting and using these Web3 features within their games. And so what that actually looks like behind the scenes is like, I'm signing up for a game, right? And I'm using my email and on the back end, it actually creates a wallet with all the keys and everything related to that Web3 wallet, associates it with the existing backend authentication tied to that user's email. They don't see anything. And then they're able to, with their logged in profile, which they're familiar with in Web2 games or, any type of Web2 normal account. And then they are able to like transact and do everything without that challenge there. So we kind of took this and we heard it from a lot of other clients, and then that kind of led us to something that's coming out very soon. So I'll pass it to Will to make that announcement.
Yeah, we will do a much bigger announcement around this and probably share some more details in the upcoming weeks. But I think this is one that we're really excited about. We'll offer a solution that enables seamless user onboarding. We've got a set of React hooks or off-the-shelf components that you can embed in your app to allow users to log in with social login, issue keys, sign transactions, kind of those critical functions. We'll expand this to be supported with all of the native privacy tooling. So you can start to really innovate around what are the unique workflows that you can build around. Hey, maybe it's onboard users and use this to facilitate payroll, but now your users don't need to worry about where do I get my keys, the Web3 aspect of it, right? And then we're also thinking about how do we adopt this to position it well for customers who have more unique use cases around like policy engines and things like this. And so we'll be supporting some of those solutions with the product. Just to kind of tease things a little bit, where the product's going to be called AvaCloud Passport. And so we've got some big plans for it as we get it fully incorporated within the stack of other solutions that we offer. But definitely excited to get this out the door in the next coming weeks. If people are interested in getting early access or being one of our beta group, please let us know.
Love the name. Really excited for AvaCloud Passport.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, to your point, if anyone out there is listening, you're building and you think this would meet the need for you, shoot us a DM, a comment, reach out. We'll definitely coordinate so that we can align on that and get you some early access. So yeah, with that being said, I guess that might be a good place to wrap. We, thank you everybody for tuning in. Just a couple like housekeeping things. So one, we've got tons of new updates coming. As you heard on this call, there's going to be so many new features that are shipping out. We can't wait to share those with you guys. You can, be the first one to find out that information. Please make sure you're following the AvaCloud account. You can also go to avacloud.io. That is where you can go and spin up and launch your own L1 if you want to, literally today. You could probably do it before the next hour if you wanted to, in the next 15 minutes. You can get testnet up. So I'd encourage you to check that out. There's a blog there as well where we're posting new updates and things like that. We've got a lot more plans. You can find us on Discord, in the AVAX Discord. You can find us on Telegram and all the builders channels. So wherever you are, you'll probably be able to find us, or we'll find you. So thank you guys for jumping on today. Really appreciate you sharing everything, this update. And as we look back on the previous year, and especially as we look forward, we'll share more updates. I can't wait to see where we're at a year from now. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.